we see with Perez, he's 3-4 seasons there now with Red Bull, and he still can't match Max.
Up a midfield battle. Do we think that Mercedes are going to get sucked into that midfield battle?
I think so, because I think that midfield battle, particularly this year, is going to get bigger in terms of more teams.
Hello and welcome to On Track GP. We are so very nearly at the start of the season, just a few days to go, but we've got a lot to talk about. There's been pre-season testing, and joining me this morning is Coilin. Lovely to see you. You fell asleep during testing.
I did. Every morning I fell asleep. I got up nice and early first and happened to fall asleep after the first hour. So that'll tell you how exciting it was.
Oh, do you know what? I don't blame you, because I think pre-season testing is one of the most boring things to watch. And in honesty, it tells you really not that much about the cars moving forward. That so many teams keep things back, don't they? And we don't really see it until the race itself.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the times in testing, particularly because it's the start of the season, everybody has a new car. Everybody will kind of do, I'm sure as we heard before, this term called sandbagging, where they'll purposely go around with a high fuel load or something. We've seen it all last week. Red Bull 5th and 6th fastest times throughout the 3 days. Surely that's not right.
Definitely not. That's not going to happen, because Verstappen was top of the times on day one, so there's probably a lot of that sandbagging situation. What did you make of the Red Bull from what you saw?
It looks like it's going to do the job again this year. The race runs and the kind of high fuel runs looked very good. Tyres looked very good, and then of course day one, like you said, he went fastest. I think it was on the C3 tyre, which will be this weekend's soft tyre. So it was very, very good. And the thing that stood out for me was when he went fastest that time on day one, the camera cut to the garage, and it was all the engineers kind of smiling as if to say, okay, we've got the job done here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they have. I don't think anyone has kind of predicted anything else than Red Bull and Max probably taking this season to win another constructors as well for him. But what did you make of Checo? Because there's always a lot of question marks over this season. Will it be his last at Red Bull? Did he look good in testing, or around about the same?
Around about the same. He looked okay. He was hindered by a bit of a problem on day 2, overheating brakes, which it's hard to know whether it's something to look out for or not this weekend, because obviously it's going to be, the conditions are incredibly warm over there in Bahrain, so something to keep an eye on. But in terms of Checo being Checo, he looked okay. Yeah,
it's hard to kind of judge. I guess the race it's not really his fault, is it? But this weekend, I'm really excited for F1 to be back, but I'm excited to see what happens this season, because we've said there's so much riding on next season, and there's so many moving parts for 25 that this one is kind of like do or die for me in terms of Sergio Perez, if he was to keep the seat, or where he'll go next. Sainz and Leclerc, they were top on days 2 and 3. The Ferrari, we've said, obviously they know they've got Lewis coming. Lewis Hamilton would not, in my opinion, be moving to Ferrari unless he saw a plan and a car that is good enough to compete with the Red Bulls, which he clearly doesn't see at Mercedes. So are we looking at Ferrari as the team that is going to challenge the Red Bulls?
Yeah, I think so. I think throughout testing, it certainly looks like anyway that they're a lot closer this year to Red Bull. I think they believe internally that there's still a bit of work to do in order to catch them or to be better than them. But I think as a whole, the whole kind of vibe is that things are getting better. And of course, this is the first year where Fred Vasseur kind of properly putting in place what he wants to do. And I think we should see some really good improvements from Ferrari this year.
Did you see any particular driver from Sainz? Because obviously, as it stands, we all think he's probably going to end up at Audi, but we know that this is his last season at Ferrari. So, what happens in between that 1 year, between when Audi come in 26 and next year? He's going to have the season of his life to make sure that he has got a seat. Can't take a year out, can he?
Yeah, exactly. But I think there'll be a lot of interest in him anyway. He's shown last year and in other years with McLaren and when he was with Renault that he is a very good driver. One of the things that actually caught my eye during testing at the week was that there was a picture going around of Carlos Sainz Sr. meeting with Christian Horner and Helmut Marko in the paddock. So
I'd love that.
You could read into that, but maybe I'm sure it's nothing. Obviously, he used to be a Red Bull driver with Toro Rosso, but there could be there's always little conversations going on with different teams, and that I think he'll be fine for next year.
There is an argument that maybe he does go to Red Bull for a season, but then are Red Bull going to be looking for a season?
Yeah, well, that's it. One season, kind of adapt yourself to a new car and everything. It's a lot to kind of do. Yeah. We see with Perez, he's 3-4 seasons there now with Red Bull, and he still can't match Max.
Yeah, it's a tough job to match Max even. I think even the best drivers wouldn't be able to do that. Looking at Mercedes, they also did look quite strong, as well as the Aston and the McLaren. Do you think that this is really this is a very big season for Mercedes because of the Lewis situation? They're also going to be looking for a new driver. Will George Russell be the number one, or will they bring in someone else to kind of fill the void that Lewis will leave and make them number one? But the car has to do better.
Yeah, well, I think regardless of whether Lewis was going to leave at the end of this year or not, this season was going to be important for Mercedes. The last 2 seasons have been a waste, to be honest, considering where they were before the regulation change. So I think this is all about kind of like a year of recovery, and then, like you said, kind of showing people that they can run at the front again, because they're going to need to replace Lewis. There's talks of maybe Fernando Alonso, there's talks of maybe again Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon. There's all these different names being thrown into the pot, but nobody's going to want to go there if they don't see a car that they can win with or get podiums with. So I think it's going to be a very important season. The signs look good with the W15. It looks a lot more kind of controlled and planted in the corners.
Finally,
a little bit quicker.
Side pods.
Yes, exactly.
We're done with the side pods. There's no porpoising. Where, I feel like from Mercedes' point of view, this should be a season where hopefully they do well. But there is, I think, pressure on George Russell. I think he probably hasn't. It's quite difficult to, I guess, shine in that car, especially the last couple of years. But I think this is a really, really big season for George. It
is a big season. I mean, last season, I suppose a lot of it you could put down to the car, but it was a very messy season from George. He was kind of up and down and all over the place. Qualifying, bad qualifyings, bad race results. Of course, he crashed out in Singapore while trying to chase down Sainz for the lead. And yeah, it's going to be an important season. I think he should be okay, but he needs to get his head down and show his results.
And we're looking for a mature season as well from him.
Yeah.
What did you make of the Astons as well during testing?
Again, Aston's they're a bit like Mercedes or McLaren. It's very hard to kind of tell where they really are, but the main signs is that they're very comfortable. The kind of vibe in the team is that, yes, we've made a step forward, which is the main thing. I think they could be up there running with McLaren or even Mercedes and Ferrari come this weekend.
Do we think that? So in terms of obviously that kind of upper midfield battle, do we think that Mercedes are going to get sucked into that midfield battle?
I think so, because I think that midfield battle, particularly this year, is going to get bigger in terms of more teams. I think you're going to have the top 2 teams you're going to have are obviously Red Bull and then Ferrari very close second, and then from third downwards is going to be your midfield. So Mercedes and maybe McLaren or Aston Martin, they'll be looking to get out of that and kind of join Ferrari as the season goes along as a main challenger to Red Bull.
Did you see anything from McLaren perspective? Because obviously last season they started off pretty poor, and then they had a brilliant resurgence, and credit to both drivers as well as the car and Zach Brown. They really pulled it back, but I don't feel like they can afford to maybe have another slow start to the season.
No, they can't, and that's a bit of a worrying problem, because that's the kind of general idea that's come out of the week's testing for them. It was a very quiet testing. I think it was Norris that hit problems on day 2. There was a fuel issue. He's stuck in the garage for hours, and the general kind of feedback that's coming from them is, we need to make a step up now, kind of thing. Kind of very same to what they were saying last year. So it's funny, because I thought they'd very easily continue on from what they made last year and the progress they got, but it's not sounding particularly good, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things, again, we're just going to have to wait and see till the car is actually racing for us to see. And then again, similarly, they didn't have the upgrades coming until I think the 4th, 5th race in, did they? And then they started to improve. But I feel like they need to hit the ground running, because we both know that they've got incredible drivers, 2 really competent, good drivers. And with all this changing coming about in the next couple of years, I know Lando is tied down, I think, till 27 potentially. I think it's till
26 or 27, something like that. Yeah,
but if it's till 26, I mean, maybe it all links back, because maybe maybe Sainz would go to Red Bull for a season to free up Lando for 26.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts. So for me, McLaren, they're a massive, institution, and I really love McLaren, but I think they need to have another season how they ended at the start. It needs to be more consistent the whole way through for me. Williams, on day 1, it wasn't great. A few issues. Fuel pump failure for Alex Albon in the morning. Drive shaft failure for Logan Sargent in the afternoon. I think we gave a lot of praise to Williams last season for how much progress they had made. They weren't rock bottom with the part. Alex Albon had a stellar season in that car as well. What is the realistic expectation for Williams?
More progress, to be honest. I think, like you said, they had a really good season last year, finished 7th in the Constructors' Championship at the end, and Alex Albon in particular had a great season. These issues, you can read into them and say, oh yeah, it's kind of like on the back foot, starting off with issues in testing, but you'd rather have them in testing than have them this weekend in free practice or in qualifying. So yeah, I think they can continue to improve. I don't know how much further can they could probably challenge Alpine maybe. Can they challenge Aston Martin, McLaren? That's probably too much at the moment for them. But yeah, I think they'll be definitely up in the midfield for sure.
And just having a kind of look at the cars, the V-carb, the RB V-carb, it's looking very planted and secured, high-speed corners as well. Is there any real expectation for this car? Because obviously this is an AlphaTauri, it's part of a Red Bull, but are we looking at this rebrand for it to actually be a competitive car? What is the point of this whole rebrand and, looking at this car? Are we thinking that they're going to be challenging? What is the point of it?
Well, a lot of talk inside the team is that they're challenging, or they're hoping to challenge for the top end of the midfield. So you're talking again maybe the McLarens and Aston Martins. And a lot of the car itself, the V-Carb 01, when I seen it actually at the launch in Las Vegas not too long ago, I thought, oh, that's completely different to what they had last year. And it's kind of, there is an element here and there that they've taken from the RB19 without making it too obvious. So
I guess they can. It's a parent company, isn't it?
You have to remember years ago when they were Toro Rosso, they were essentially using Red Bull's year-old cars, and nobody said anything. So, but I think for this year, the whole idea of the rebrand and everything is to kind of say, okay, we're no longer a junior team or a sister team of Red Bull. We're our own kind of name or our own team. We want to do well, and Red Bull as a company, it suits them to have two cars or two teams that can perform and score points, and maybe even the odd podium sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that driver lineup is Yuki Tsunoda and Danny Ricciardo. Is there expectation on Danny Ricciardo?
Yes, I think so. I think there's going to be an important season for Daniel Ricciardo. I think he really needs to perform, and more importantly, he needs to outperform Yuki, because you're in this kind of funny area now where there's a shot at the Red Bull seat, or after next year when you have the likes of Liam Lawson and everything that will want to come into that car or that team, you're going to have a kind of thing, it's either Red Bull or I'm finished kind of thing. So it's going to be very important for him to perform this year.
Okay. The Red Bull itself, just sticking with them quickly, they've gone for this zero concept design, similar to kind of like Mercedes' previous cars. Is there something that Adrian Newey has found that maybe Mercedes missed in the car, or?
I think so. I was laughing all last week because you might have seen it. There was this meme going around of Adrian Newey looking at last year's Mercedes, and there's like a speech bubble at his head. He's like, I can fix this, and then it comes out with that. So
is it a risk though? Because the Mercedes last season didn't really get going until kind of the latter stages.
Yeah, it is a bit of a risk, but again, it's Adrian Newey. This guy's won championship titles designing cars for McLaren, designing cars for Williams. I mean, he wouldn't do it if he wasn't confident that he could make it work, and I'm fairly sure he's going to make it work. So
yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. As we mentioned, they have all held back their pace. We're seeing the Red Bulls 5th and 6th at times. McLaren again very quiet. What is I just want to get your prediction for how you think it's going to look on practice.
In practice, I won't be surprised if we still see some of this kind of sandbagging going slowly. That's usually what they do.
Save it all for the race.
Yeah, or at least qualifying, where the one lap pace matters. So it's very hard to tell. I think we'll see general improvements across the board. Maybe the stake cars or team, whatever you want to call them. Stake, what a weird name.
/ kick. It's probably kick.
Stake, kick, Sauber. Yeah, exactly. I think they could be up in the top 10 for practice, but the likes of themselves or Haas or maybe even Williams, I couldn't expect them to do well in the top 10 for qualifying.
There's a lot of excitement. Obviously, the first race of the season, we all love it. I'm just thinking to myself, how do I feel like this weekend's going to pan out? Are we in for surprises this season?
I think we'll be in for a few. I think there could be a few teams that will spring surprises, namely Aston Martin and McLaren. I think even though McLaren are saying a little bit like, oh, we're on the back foot, I'm not 100% convinced that they're really as bad as they are. So we'll have to see this week, or this weekend on Saturday when the race is on. But I think there could be a couple of teams that could make a few jumps and make a few surprises. All right, yeah.
Who do you think is going to be on the podium this weekend?
Red Bull, most definitely. Verstappen probably to win.
Double stack?
Perez, I'm not sure. I think he'll do well. He always does well at the start of the season. He should be on the podium, but it's kind of very hard to tell with the way he was last year, kind of up and down. So, and I'd expect the Ferraris to be there at least.
Okay, and just quickly looking at the Alpine, again, there hasn't really been much conversation around Alpine. I mean, it's no surprise, Gasly and Ocon, they don't get on, they're not friends or anything like that. I think, again, this is going to be a very interesting season for them with all the investment coming in with this driver lineup. Probably can see some moving parts going into 25. They've got the all-new A524. What's your thoughts been on that car?
Well, first of all, with Alpine, it's very funny, like you mentioned, all the investment and everything that's gone into that team. They've got the testing, and I've heard, like you said, it was very quiet, but I've heard that A524, it's an all new concept, all new design, new parts, the whole lot, but they're very unimpressed with it. I've heard that the pace in the race runs and the high fuel runs been very bad. They're arguably probably one of the worst cars on the grid, I've heard, at the moment.
Wow.
And you're coming into the first race of the season and all this kind of, and it was a very quiet session. They didn't really do anything. The only time I seen the Alpine all week was when they changed the front nose cover from black to blue on Friday. For whatever reason they did that, but yeah, it's not good times for Alpine.
That's worrying, isn't it? Because if we think of the situation that they were in not too long ago when they had Otmar, and they decided to go in a different direction. Obviously they lost Piastri, Alonso as well. I don't know, I felt like Alpine were at that stage where maybe they were going to go on and build, and we're not seeing anything of the sort at the moment with Alpine. I think the driver lineup, this whole French connection, I don't think it's been as exciting as probably they would have thought. They got this investment, I guess that's going to take time, but there still has to be questions answered about the Alpine in between. We can't see Alpine finish at the back of the grid. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, last year I was very surprised when they dropped Otmar. I think that was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, and I think it's now kind of all panic stations, especially with this new car. There's like, change as much as we can, let's try something new. But more often than not in Formula 1, when you see teams going to a whole new concept, like the worry with Mercedes for a while was, is this going to work or is it not going to work? Now it looks like it's worked, but I think Alpine have done the same thing, and now they're realising, oh, hold on a minute, this isn't going to work. And then you put that on top of the fact that their engine or their power unit is running at a deficit, and because of the frozen regulations now, they can't do anything about it. So they for me, I think they're risking falling really kind of into a no man's land where it's kind of just, oh yeah, we're just racing, struggling for points, struggling for the top 10. I think it's going to be, unless they can pull something major out of the bag with an upgrade later in the season or something, I think it could be a very disappointing season for Alpine.
Well, let's stick with that towards the back of the grid, because Haas, they've also got a lot of changes. We've seen the car and they're all going for this carbon fibre look. Obviously there's no Gunter as well, no Gunter Steiner in the pits. What is the prediction for Haas? Are they just waiting for an Andretti takeover at this point?
It's hard to tell. From listening to their new team principal, Ayo Komatsu, a lot of it is just, the main focus is getting kind of under this tyre issue they have. So they want to make sure that's sorted for the new season. A lot of their times in testing and kind of general performance was really slow, but that's because they're trying to figure out how to fix this. And then for them, he said, it's just, we have to accept that we are going to be the slowest car in the grid in Bahrain. There's no getting around it. Whether there will be or not, whether he's talking through his teeth, we'll have to see. But I think it's just going to be kind of get the issues sorted, start making improvements, start building slowly and getting back up the grid as slow as we can, but as possible.
I guess it's one of those things where no one really has that much expectation of Haas. They have a good driver lineup. We know that on a one lap pace, you'd say Nico Hülkenberg is one of the best on the grid for that, as well as having Kevin Magnussen, who's super competent. But is it the worst thing for them if they finish at the back of the grid?
Yeah, probably, because they're fixing the problems and everything this season, but they'll still want to see a little bit of improvement. Now, a little bit of improvement, if that's 10th to 9th or 10th to 8th or whatever, that's any improvement is good improvement. Yeah. But to finish bottom again, I think that's going to be a big issue.
Okay.
They want to avoid that.
And just quickly on stake/kick, because obviously for the regulations, it's a gambling company, and in countries where you can't gamble, it will be called kick. That is the formerly known Alfa Romeo, probably the most irrelevant car on the grid. Do we have any expectation for that, or again, are we just waiting for next year?
I think it's just waiting for kind of next year and waiting for the Audi takeover, really. I think this whole kind of stake, kick, whatever you want to call them, is just a holding name, and it's just kind of like holding our spot on the grid. So I don't know, it's tricky to know that team. Obviously they're Sauber at the end of the day. Sauber was very good for kind of one season to the other, kind of being at the back of the grid and all of a sudden jumping into the middle of the grid and challenging for podiums. We've seen it so many times through the years with that team. So you can't mark them out for doing well. I'm sure they could score points, a good few points this year. sure it wouldn't be hard to improve on what they didn't do
yeah.
last year. So, but yeah, you know, it's hard to know. I think it's, like you said, they're just waiting to see what happens and kind of just doing the best as they go along.
Well, also for both drivers, Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas, this could be their last season. You know, once the takeover comes, it's probably unlikely they're going to stay with the same driver lineup. It could leave them both without a seat, if not one. So I think it's an important season for both of them to try and achieve as much as they possibly can as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been a lot of names thrown into the pot with Audi in terms of 2026, and Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas aren't really names I've been hearing too much in connection with Audi. So, it's going to be a big season. Of course, it's going to be a big season for Zhou. First Chinese Grand Prix coming up now in April for him. So, and Valtteri Bottas as well. He's going to want to really show his worth and make sure that if this year is going to be last year at stake, that he's putting his name out there to show, yes, I'm still relevant in Formula One. Yeah. I can still do well with whatever team I want to stay on the grid.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Coilin. And we did our predictions, didn't we? We said Red Bull and Ferraris on the podium.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's a safe bet unless something leery happens.
Yeah, I can see it. I think I will also I'm going to go for a Red Bull. I'm going to go for a Ferrari. I think I'm going to go Max, Sainz, Alonso.
Oh, Alonso.
I'm gonna back Alonso. I love Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Exactly, who doesn't? He's always keeping us on our toes. Of course, please make sure you like and subscribe to On Track GP. Make sure you follow us. The new season is quickly approaching, and we're going to have you covered for everything. So make sure you stay with us, and we will see you very soon.